Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today on this episode, I think this is going to be a great video because I'm going to be answering a very general question that everybody has, especially when you're starting out, and that is, how do you go to a new body of water, find the best areas, and catch fish quickly? That is something that, I struggled with early on in my career, and I really had to get over it because I was traveling all around the country to catch fish. And I think I got over those concerns early on just because I was traveling to so many different areas. As soon as I felt comfortable in a certain region, fishing certain types of fisheries, I'd move on to another area that I'd feel uncomfortable. And by doing that, I started feeling comfortable just about everywhere. So we're going to be talking about some of the principles that I use to catch fish quickly on new bodies of water. So finding good areas and figuring out how to catch those fish. But before we get started, I want to remind everybody that if you have a topic or a question that you want me to do a video on, make sure that you drop a comment in the comment section on any of the videos I have on my channel. And as long as it's a topic or question that I feel like I can weigh in on, I absolutely will do a video on it because that's how I get a lot of my content ideas, is through viewers like yourself. So thank you in advance. Make sure you drop a comment below. All right, so let's get started with principle number one. The first thing that I do when I'm going to a new body of water I've never been to before, don't really know anything about it, is something that may sound kind of weird, but I'm gonna elaborate on it. And that is to find the best spawning habitat, the areas of a lake, and I'm talking about general areas. I'm not talking about like one little tiny cove or something like that, but like the part of the lake where there's more spawning area than the rest of the lake. And the reason why this is so important is a bass's life cycle really revolves around the spawning cycle. And so a bass, that's like one of the biggest events in their life on an annual basis, is the spawn. And so if you have the most spawning habitat in one region of the lake, and I'm talking about general region, that's going to most likely be, I would say 99.9% of the time, that's where one of the largest populations of fish is going to live, if not the biggest population of fish. Just because there's more habitat for more fish to spawn in. And so that is one thing that I don't hear a lot of people talk about, is really, even if you're going to fish in the wintertime or the summer or the fall, a lot of people just focus on the seasonal patterns, but they forget about the general areas that are really suitable for the full life cycle, all 4 seasons for those fish. And for me, if you have good suitable spawning habitat, you've probably got all the other qualities that you need for the rest of the season there as well. Good example here is here on Lake Chickamauga. You look at the map. If you were using these principles, you would look at, the Harrison Bay and Chester Frost, area of the lake, and you'd see that those have great gradual sloping, contours. So using your Navionics maps, they're real gradual sloping. So good, shallow water areas to spawn in. They've got a lot of good cover, like stumps and things like that. And they've also got a lot of protected bays and pockets and creeks. All of those things combined create great spawning habitat, as long as you've got the bottom composition, which you may not know until you get to the lake and you're able to stick your rod into the bottom and feel sand or rock or something like that. But overall, if you find the area of the lake that has the most spawning habitat, that is going to put you in a high percentage type situation where you're going to have more fish to fish for. And so your chances of catching more fish definitely goes up. All right, so the next principle is following the seasonal pattern. So you've already found this area of the lake that you want to start in that has the most spawning habitat, which in turn should provide the most population of fish. But then you need to focus on the seasonal pattern. If it's a springtime, then you just go for those spawning areas, right? But if it's the fall or the summer or the winter time, you have to follow those patterns and to be able to find where the fish are positioned. So a good example would be, during the fall, this is a very defined transition time of the year. Summertime, fish can kind of be everywhere, but the fall, generally the fish are revolving around the transition of the shad moving into the backs of the creek. So these big populations of shad, millions and millions of shad, are going to the backs of these creeks that have fresh running water that's cooler than the rest of the lake running into the back of them. And so those are the areas that you want to focus on to be able to catch the bass, because they're following the shad. So that is an example of why it's really important to follow the seasonal pattern, because you have this general area that has good spawning habitat, good population of fish more than likely, and then you find that creek that has the running water into the back of it. Then you can go back there, and it's a pretty sure thing you're going to start seeing some fish or catching some fish. So it's really important to, even though we found this broad general area, you need to fit your fishing styles or how you approach it into the seasonal pattern that's prevalent at the time. All right, so this next principle is probably the most important overall. I think it's going to be the most helpful for you as far as changing your mindset. So it should be number 1, but we put it at number 3. And this principle is actually 2 parts. So the next 2 principles are pretty much along the same lines. But this next one is to make the lake your own. You may be going to a lake that is very unfamiliar. It really doesn't have a lot of the qualities that you're used to on the lakes that you fish, but there's something in it that's going to make you feel comfortable and start making you feel at home, okay? And that's what you need to search out. The biggest mistake that I see people make when they go to a new body of water is that they try to change their fishing style to the lake. So they try to adjust to the lake. And to me, that's like one of the biggest mistakes that you could possibly make in fishing, especially tournament fishing. You want to stay in your lane. You want to stay in your wheelhouse, and you want to be comfortable. And when you go to a new lake, it's so important to build confidence and momentum right off the bat. Okay. And so you can't do that by picking up techniques or fishing areas that you just don't feel comfortable with, but because somebody said on a forum that they're really good, that's what you're fishing. So my suggestion is go to the lake, drive around the lake. You can actually use Google Earth to start out with. So satellite imagery, you can look for the areas that traditionally, fish similar to how you like to fish. So if you're a shallow water guy that likes fishing stained water, that's what you're used to. Maybe you live on a river system or something like that. Go up a river, go up a creek arm, find that dirty water that you feel comfortable with. Don't go fish by the dam in the clear water, fish in a Nico rig or a Alabama rig or a small swim bait just because somebody said you needed to do that on that lake. Go put yourself in areas of the lake that you feel comfortable in, and that allows for a lot of momentum building, okay, and a lot of confidence. Once you put yourself in an area where you start catching fish, then you start getting more settled down, confident, and you can maybe go experiment with those other things that people say are traditionally good but you're not comfortable with, or those areas that are traditionally good and that you're not comfortable with. So it's always important, get confidence first, get momentum first, make the lake your own, and then you can start branching off and doing other things in different areas. And the 4th principle is pretty much the same thing, but it has to do with the baits. Again, forget about what people are saying is really good on the lake. Keep it in your back pocket. I don't mean forget about it, but keep it in your back pocket. Don't start out with things that like if you're not used to throwing a wigglewort or a jerkbait on one of the White River lakes, like, Beaver Lake, don't throw a wigglewort or a jerkbait on those lakes. Go find an area that suits your style, that you feel comfortable with, that kind of has what you're looking for, all the ingredients that get your juices going, and then fish baits that you're comfortable with. If it's a chatterbait, throw a chatterbait. Even if nobody has ever said throw a chatterbait on that lake, go throw a chatterbait, because I guarantee there's a fish in that lake that's going to want to eat a chatterbait. And once you start getting those fish, you may find an area that is untapped because nobody fishes the lake that way. And so that is so important. So fish your strengths right off the bat. Gain that momentum, gain that confidence, and then branch off and start doing the other things that people say are really good on that lake. So again, both of those, between the areas and the baits that you want to throw and the techniques you want to throw, very similar concept, but I split it into two different ones. I will give you an example that I think is a really good example. Now, I've been traveling around the country fishing tournaments for a long time, so I've experienced a lot of different fisheries, and that's why I feel very confident in these principles, especially the last two. And a great example would be, you know, I was living in Florida, learning how to catch fish out of grass. I got really good at figuring out how to break down, you know, these large expanses of grass flats. And even though when I go up north, I don't see as much grass in a lot of these lakes, maybe no grass at all, I can still apply what I learned to how bass relate to the vegetation to other types of cover like bushes. So a great example would be Bull Shoals. I think it was 2011 or 2012. I fished the TBF National Championship on that lake, which is up in Arkansas. And it's a White River chain lake. And so deep edges or steep edges, deep water, clear water. But I didn't follow any of that. I went there, and even though it didn't have grass, it had a lot of shoreline bushes, which the fish set up very similar on those shoreline bushes. And so that's what I gravitated towards. And I ended up doing the same type of flipping and pitching techniques that I used down in Florida, tweaked it just a little bit, and ended up missing the win by like 4 ounces and finished third in that event. And if I hadn't made that lake my own and fished it the way that I like to fish, I probably wouldn't have had a good tournament there. So that right there, right off the bat, has to be something that you focus on. Do you focus on what you're good at, what your wheelhouse is, and stay in your lane. So anyways, guys, I think those are really super important principles. I'm pretty positive it's going to help you catch more fish on pretty much any fishery you go to. And over time, when you fish more and more fisheries you're not comfortable with and that are new, you're just gonna gain so much more momentum, and you're just gonna be unstoppable. So anyways, guys, thank you for watching this video. If you have any questions, comments, or you want me to cover a topic in the next video, drop a comment below. Make sure you like, share, subscribe. I'll see you out on the water. Trust the process.